Hello. I'm gonna do a quick Dome Keeper video. A lot of people ask me what's better, laser or sword, or they're asking me why I use laser in a certain run and sword in a different one. I'm gonna go over the pros and cons of each, and then give my recommendations for what you should use in each mode. So first of all, ease of use. The laser is going to be much easier to use than the sword, especially for a beginner. Not that that means you shouldn't learn how to use the sword, but laser, you pretty much just have to decide what you want to shoot at, and sword, there's more skill in aiming, managing your cooldowns, and probably even more skill in the target prioritization part. Early strength of all weapons, I would say sword tends to manage the early waves better. Laser, you tend to take a decent amount of damage before you can upgrade to dual laser, which is a huge power spike. Then late game strength, the laser overtakes the sword. Dual laser is really strong. You can now get dual laser and the highest laser strength upgrade as of a couple patches ago. And that means the late game waves, we're talking like 45, 50, 60, are now doable with the laser, where with the sword, these become extremely difficult. Dome upgrades. So, kind of split into two things here. First of all, the max health upgrades. The max health upgrades look like they should be the same, whether you're using laser or sword, but they're not. If you're using the laser, the max health upgrades give you the additional health, but they don't heal you any of your missing health. Whereas on the sword, when you buy max health, it gives you a nearly full heal each time, and that's really significant in a mode like Fixed Cobalt, where you're not going to have much access to healing, or something like Countdown, where you're trying to send so many resources so fast that you really don't want to focus on healing. There's also these additional upgrades you can purchase with Cobalt. For the laser, you have melee damage reduction. For the sword, you have the auto heal upgrades. I don't know of anyone good at the game using the auto heal on the sword dome. I think it's just kind of a noob trap. Unfortunately, it's not very useful, and it's very expensive. The melee damage reduction is solid enough that if you are going to do a really long run, if you're playing normal prestige mode and you're trying to do a run that's going to last 4 or 5 hours, then it can be really useful to have a bit of melee damage reduction. Cost-wise, I said both the laser and the sword are kind of comparable, but it's really distributed a bit differently, because with the laser, you generally will be saving up quite a bit to get the dual laser early. It's a 24 iron purchase that you're going to be getting way before you're spending 24 iron on anything else. You should be getting it, for example, way before you buy the 20 cost drill upgrade, in my opinion. But after upgrading to dual laser, there's little else you need to do. You can upgrade the laser's strength for another 24 iron. Anything after that is kind of unnecessary, and long term it may be necessary. Long term might be good to continue to upgrade the speed of the laser. Get the swivel is very nice, but you are mostly just worrying about this upfront cost of the dual laser. Whereas the sword is pretty cheap up front, but there's more things to be upgrading with the shield pad, the stab, and the swing. So it kind of evens out. Looking at the leaderboards, looking at the top 10 of each leaderboard, seeing how many are laser and how many are sword. So on the normal prestige board, 10 out of 10 of the top 10 are sword, 0 are laser, and that kind of baffles me a bit. And I speak with some of the really good players all the time. I think that there's at least one legitimate run that for some reason has been flagged as cheating. that I know is legitimate because there's video of it, that would be laser. But most of these runs that are in the top 10 are either dubious or they are just runs we don't have any information about because they're Chinese players who, if they have a community that's separate from the community of players that I would be speaking to. So I have little information as to why Sword seems to perform so well. I think over time that should shift significantly more towards laser, and maybe just hasn't had enough time yet. For fixed Cobalt, makes more sense. I think I'm currently 5th on this board. 8 lasers and 2 swords. Either one actually should be fine, but I think whereas this leaderboard started as one where you could play super fast, just send a bunch of resources and be super risky, now the scores are getting higher and higher, up into the 10,000s or 15,000s. These are pretty long runs where having the dual laser is really nice, and you can't just heal up, obviously, because you don't have extra Cobalt. Looking at Countdown, it's 7 swords, 3 lasers, but the laser players are 1st, 2nd, and 4th, and the top 2 scores are actually from before laser was buffed, so you couldn't get dual laser and the highest laser strength. I don't know if those scores are legitimate. There are sometimes cheated scores on the boards that get removed. But they've been there for quite some time, and they might be just players who are insane with the laser. I don't know. I can't explain that to you. I can't explain that Sword is going to be the overall favorite. I think I'm 7th on this leaderboard at the moment, because you don't have to throw that much resources into it early. You can handle the early waves without too much trouble, just spending pretty minimally on the sword. Now, I did talk to Zimny a little bit, who is one of the strongest players on multiple leaderboards, who thinks that laser is going to come out ahead in Countdown as well. It's not all that much more expensive. If you look at the early upgrades, I compared the upgrades that I would be likely to spend on laser would have cost about 48 iron, and on sword it was 39, and that's basically just to get to the mid game, because Countdown prestige runs don't run that long. So sort of what we would think of as the mid game in the longer runs is the end of these runs. So it's not that much more expensive, and it might prove to be enough stronger that it's worth taking laser. So my suggested use, I'm actually suggesting laser for normal prestige, even though none of the top 10 use it. Obviously, you can try to use the sword and maybe it'll be really successful for you, but I think for the vast majority of people, the dual laser upgrade is going to make things so much easier for you, make your life so much better. And I think even a lot of the strongest players would agree with that. Also, fixed Cobalt, where the leaderboard seems to agree with me a bit more. And large and huge relic hunt. Again, for the same reason, you have these runs that are going long enough. You probably just want the dual laser to be able to take care of huge waves of enemies coming at you on both sides constantly. And then sword on Countdown prestige, I talked about a little bit. Again, it's just because you can kind of get by without upgrading it much early. Maybe just put one stab upgrade and one blade upgrade, and that'll carry you through a good portion of the run. And for small or normal relic hunt, Really, it doesn't matter. You can use laser or sword on any of these relic hunts and be fine. But if you're struggling with small or normal relic hunt, um, on whatever difficulty you're playing, try out the sword because you might end up not having to put as much iron into it as you would the laser, and that lets you invest into anything else that you choose to invest your iron into. So overall, what's better, laser or sword? It's kind of an it depends situation. I would say probably laser is a bit better overall, but you can clearly see, looking at the modes, that it's different depending on what you're playing. And even if you look at the leaderboards, the sword is pretty heavily favored still, although I think a lot of that carries over from before the laser was buffed. So that's my summary. Let me know if you have any other Dome Keeper topics you want me to cover, and see ya. Bye.